This is Beyond the Blue Badge, brought to you by the Microsoft Alumni Network, where we dive into Microsoft alumni stories that inform and inspire.
Hi, this is Rich Kaplan, and this is Microsoft Alumni Network's Beyond the Blue Badge. Today I'm here with Krishnan Iyer. Krishnan worked at Microsoft in a number of different roles, but his real passion is helping others. His decades-long dedication to service has propelled transformative initiatives addressing homelessness, poverty, and social inequity. Krishnan is on the board of directors at HopeLink, aiding homelessness and low-income families in King and Snohomish counties. Additionally, he's a board member of Bellevue LifeSpring. Krishnan fosters stability and self-sufficiency for families in Bellevue, providing essential resources like food, clothing, and education. Today, Krishnan leads Dignity First, a social enterprise empowering the homeless with choice and dignity through innovative technology and sustainable practices. Krishnan, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Rich. I appreciate this opportunity.
Sure. So throughout your career, you've had various leadership roles at Microsoft. Maybe the best way to start is to talk about your Microsoft career. When did you start at Microsoft and what did you do there?
I joined Microsoft in 1991. It was one of the few companies that interviewed me, along with Intel Computer Sciences Corporation and a few others back then. Microsoft actually offered me the lowest compensation, and I still chose Microsoft.
That's funny.
And the weird reason I chose Microsoft was actually, one is the interviewer, Greg Atchison. I'll never forget him. He had a Deadhead t-shirt on, and it was just a fantastic experience. And at the interview, I was very open about my comparison of MS-DOS with Unix and how I didn't think MS-DOS had it in it. And
well, I think you were right. I think you were right, by the way, but go on.
But despite the criticism, I received an offer from Microsoft. So that showed me that they were open to diverse perspectives and I could speak my mind in this company. So I joined that company and I'm so glad that I did that. And at Microsoft, these are things I learned later, right? This notion of being surrounded by people smarter than you are. I didn't know this before I went there. Once I went there, I went, oh my God, there are so many people. So the best thing to do is to just start learning from them, right? So that's where my learn it all approach, I was forced to learn it all because people knew way more than I did. So it was easy.
What different roles did you have at Microsoft?
I basically started by fixing bugs in TCP/IP. Greg Atchison, that's what he interviewed me for. And then David Lineweber, Leslie Pop invited me to come and upgrade the core infrastructure at Microsoft. So that's the next role I took. Again, TCP/IP. And then from there, Elliot Morris, Steve Klepper, Rich Kaplan offered me an opportunity to take those best practices and help other large companies like Boeing, Nordstrom, and Microsoft Consulting Services, which to this day still is kind of the warmest group that I ever was at Microsoft. And then from there, I got an opportunity to go work deeply in the Windows Core operating system division. There, Makarand Agashe, Soma Shekhar, Jawad Khaki. And again, I think I worked with you, Rich, in software assurance. So I got a chance to work on networking software assurance. So Mark Ashita is another, Narendra Gidwani, another guy who I learned a lot from. And then my first tour of duty at Microsoft ended with a gold star at Microsoft.com, where again, John Fredrickson helped me. And I was the engineering manager running the learning platform there. So at that point, I resigned from Microsoft to go pursue entrepreneurship. And then again, back in 2020, I got re-invited to come join Microsoft, lead the India cybersecurity team by Brett Arsenault. So lots of great opportunities there. And in the pandemic, I learned even more.
Yeah, I bet you did. Yeah, you did have a lot of great experiences, and some of them mirrored what I did. We were in some of the same groups along the way, as you called out. Tell me how those experiences shaped your leadership style. What did you learn? What advice would you give to aspiring leaders in the technology industry based on all those years of experience?
Again, I came into Microsoft. I didn't really have a leadership style because I was not a leader. I came in and learned how to become a leader, looking at a lot of other people around me and how they succeeded. So the couple of things I'll say is one is resilience and determination. This is something I learned in the streets of Mumbai growing up, and that applied directly at Microsoft. So overcoming challenges, waiting for that application form or persisting, and this learning oriented approach of continuous knowledge, right? There's always information you can use to grow. So incorporating that into a style of leading people. And then being inclusive and collaborative. So you just have to be open to all the different ideas. Just listening to it is not enough. You have to go in and engage. And then on the EQ side, I heard Satya say this way before he was a CEO. He talked about the trump card being emotional quotient, EQ. Empathy, right? Understanding what people are trying to say and also being vulnerable. I think when you are vulnerable, you allow others to share more. And by that, your empathy increases. And support your team, right? Support your partner teams without any expectation. They need something and you do it just because it's the right thing to do, not because you're getting something in return.
I love everything you said. It reminded me when you come out of college and you've just gotten your degree, you want to change the world. And obviously you got hired. If you get work at Microsoft or any other tech company, you got hired because you're very smart. And in some senses, after you get hired, you have to prove how smart you are. And what you said was sort of the opposite, which is, no, you don't have to prove how smart you are. You have to prove that you have empathy and compassion. You have to prove that you're a team player. You have to prove that your success is other people's success. And those are things you learn along the way. Even what you said about working with me and others, helping Boeing, Nordstrom's local Northwest companies. Your success was not your own when you were working with them. When you were working on the TCP/IP stack at Boeing, your success was them being successful connecting all their devices using TCP/IP. Last time you and I chatted, we discussed this concept of durable happiness. And it's a great term. I had never even thought about it before. I love that. I'm going to try to use that term more. Explain why you came up with that and what it means.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's actually a theory, okay? I'm not sure if it's true, but here it goes. It sort of emerged from my observation and experiences. So I'm always trying to self-reflect and learn from what's happening and, like a scientist, think, hey, why is this working and not that? So I noticed that some forms of happiness have a long-lasting impact than others, right? So they have a longer shelf life. And I thought, so we want the kind of happiness that could endure over time. So to understand this better, I dug in a little deeper, searching for some patterns and even looking for mathematical equations to explain it because I'm a geek like that. And this is still an ongoing experiment. And here's sort of my current working hypothesis, right? So what I've seen is you get a lasting sense of fulfillment, and that goes beyond temporary pleasures. And that's what I call durable happiness. It has to be lasting, right? And what I found is that I got profound joy and satisfaction when I helped others selflessly without any expectation, right? And again, this is in hindsight, I found out that it's basically happiness that is rooted in gratitude and purpose. When you find happiness like that, it tends to be durable. So I'll give you an example of my wife because I was talking to Sunita about this, and she's a teacher. But a lot of her students love her so much, right? And she gets so much satisfaction that she's able to put up with all the things that comes with that bag of being a teacher in this time, right? So she will go and have this relationship with her parents and families where she's able to see and they still remember. Like we'll go to a bank somewhere and some adult will come and say, "Oh my God, you changed my life," right? And so that's where I go, there it is. It's durable happiness, right? That happiness kept on giving. So that's just the theory.
That's a wonderful theory. I think a lot of people search for happiness in vacations, in cars, in whatever, in many things. And in the end, those are not durable. But helping others to be successful, empowering others, giving others joy, I understand that. That's a great concept. You and I have talked about how the Alumni Network helped you. And in fact, maybe it builds on what you said about durable happiness. You had a realization about gratitude at one of the Alumni Network events, and you and I talked about it. I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I was talking to you the last time on this topic, what struck to me is this sentence that I found wealth and professional success at Microsoft, and I found purpose at the Alumni Network.
Wow. I love that. You found purpose at the Alumni Network. Keep going.
I found purpose at the Alumni Network, which gave me durable happiness, right? Which is what I'm really after, right? So let me explain. I had gotten addicted to this being surrounded by people smarter than me. And when I left Microsoft, it was harder and harder, right? Not that there's not smart people in the world, but it's harder to find a concentration of them all in one place. So the alumni was the next best thing for me. So I had joined the alumni right after, and I think it was 2015 when Paul Shoemaker had published a book. And that's where I went to connect with the alumni. And I saw so many people doing so many amazing things.
By the way, for those of you listening, that's Paul Shoemaker's book, Can't Not Do.
Yeah, it was launched in 2015. And, we'll get a little deeper into that later. But so seeing that impactful connection and then hearing about the stories about how Microsoft people have gone out changing the world. And it started to also satisfy my desire for finding durable happiness, because these are all examples of durable happiness. This is not a roadmap of Windows or Office, but this is a roadmap of how you change some human's life somewhere permanently in a good way. That really helped. And then that gave me purpose, right? I'm going to try and see how I can explain to you how gratitude and purpose connected to me. So the moment of realization for me about purpose was not one, right? It happened over multiple things, right? The book launch was one thing, right? And then I felt like I don't have purpose. What should be my purpose? And in fact, Paul wrote in my book, he says, Krishnan, I hope you find your purpose or can't not do. And then there was this, what I call the Bethel Hindu temple incident.
That'll be interesting. I'm interested in hearing what that is.
So picture this. There's a Hindu temple in Bethel, Washington, which is about 30 miles north of Bellevue. And it's vandalized. It gets vandalized with swastikas and anti-Muslim graffiti. Okay? So it's like someone goes to an Italian restaurant and tells the Italian chef that the Indians should stop making curry. So it's completely off target. It's very offensive. And basically, it screams that the community doesn't get Indian Americans, right? And that creates prejudice, which leads to these vandalization, right? So when I saw this happening, I wanted to change that narrative. And that's when I launched Humanize, because here Paul was telling me, what's your can't not do? And then I'm driving along 148 and I see all these panhandlers that were not there 20, 30 years ago. I was like, that's my problem. I didn't want a quick fix problem. Same approach I did. I took big, bold problems at Microsoft. So homelessness is going to be there forever, unfortunately. So I said, that is what I want to work on. So in 2018, that's when I got kind of purpose and I launched Humanize Homelessness in 2018. So that's how I got into purpose. And I didn't have gratitude before I got into purpose. So this is sort of my journey into gratitude. I dove headfirst into the nonprofit homelessness space. Try to learn everything you can, surround yourself with people who know better about homelessness than I do. I saw people who had less privilege, and it made me realize actually when I was working with them that they're in fact helping me get to durable happiness by allowing me to work in that space, right? So that's when I had what I call this mind-blowing realization that my family has enough.
I appreciate you saying that. I think many people never have the experience that you just had, don't understand durable happiness, and really haven't had those moments of gratitude and purpose. They struggle out through their lives to find that.
And I stumbled into it, right? Thanks to the Microsoft alumni, thanks to Paul Shoemaker, I was able to use gratitude to improve trust within my leadership team. It was just fantastic. And then in my family, we do gratitude talks at dinner, right? So everyone takes like 2 minutes after dinner and we say, what you're most grateful for. And one night, my then 4-year-old son, he says he is grateful for our house. That took I think all of us around the table stopped and got, oh my God, a 4-year-old kid is saying this. So now gratitude and purpose are a very important part of my life.
So you use that then to start this venture called Humanize. Tell me where you are with that, how you're thinking about it, what you're aspiring to do with Humanize.
So Humanize is a 501c3, right? It's a nonprofit. I felt like there are some challenges in the 501c3 model in how it works in some parts and it doesn't work in some parts. And so I've launched Dignity First, which is a B corporation, a social enterprise.
Krishnan, so explain both of those initiatives for me, if you would.
People get a tax break when they donate. And then with that donation, you can do good work in the community. And a lot of organizations like HopeLink and Bellevue LifeSpring and many, many more do that. And they provide an impact report that talks about how they did this good work. This is the model everyone knows about in the world. Nonprofit, NGOs are different names for it. Now, there are some challenges in how this framework can express itself in the community. For example, you may get money from the federal government, okay? And they're called restricted funds, right? So you can only use that money to buy a can of soup. So a social worker who knows that there is a high school kid who has an opportunity to go play in a national basketball championship where she is going to win, cannot use the same money to buy her a basketball shoe, which is required for that person to come out of homelessness. So that is, like all things, there are obviously ways in which we can improve. So that's where a lot of companies have started in the industry, right? You've heard of Tom's Shoes, maybe. So what has happened is Delaware, among other states in the union, have decided to create a corporation called a B corporation, called a benefit corporation, versus a C corporation. So a B corporation is just like a C corporation, but their main priority is to focus on a social cause. So that is the board of directors for that B corporation are primarily held first to see if they are meeting that social cause.
I see. Different than just making money for the purpose of profit.
In addition to, not just. So a 501c3 is not allowed to make money, right? So if you take HopeLink, for example, one of the main reasons I joined their board is because they have a transportation program called DART, which is a social enterprise. For decades, they have made money doing that. And that money can now be applied to mission-aligned purpose, which are non-restricted.
I see. Very good. Okay, that is an important distinction, understanding that. Thank you for that. I want to go a slightly different direction. You talked about having a growth mindset, being open to learning. You have a community that is in that community because lack of opportunity, lack of education. I don't need to go through the list. There's hundreds of reasons why people are homeless. Is part of that education? Part of that educating that community? Does technology enable that?
Yes and yes. So the mission for humanized homelessness is different than the mission for dignity first. And your question is almost like I paid you to ask me this question. Think about the first step we have to do is awareness, right? And I didn't have this awareness that I am trying to help others get to. That's why the name of the nonprofit is Humanize Homelessness. Because when we think of homelessness, especially in Seattle, people think drugs, people think crime, people think mental health, right? That's what they think. They think, Third and Pike. They think needles on the floor. And it is true, right? There's a spectrum of homelessness that people see. There's chronic homelessness, and then there's people who are not almost falling into homelessness. So there's this spectrum. And a lot of them are there because they didn't have the privileges all of us do. The people who have the ability to listen to a podcast, that's a privilege that we do, and they didn't. So the step one is to help people educate that, hey, look, this is how people get into homelessness. And the second part is, how can we empower these people who are now educated using technology? So if I am a lawyer, a successful lawyer at Wilson Sonsini Rosati, who, by the way, helped us form this nonprofit, so thank you to them, and Amanda Pollard, she knows what it takes to be an attorney. And if she sees a student in high school who wants to be a paralegal and that requires some training, Dignity First can make it easy for Amanda to fund that. So she can say, oh yeah, I know what it means. Yeah, the $2,000 required for this is very important. So Dignity First is the technology startup, social enterprise that can connect these two people.
This is probably my final question. We talked about a lot of opportunity to help others today. We talked about purpose. We talked about durable happiness. And we talked about the set of experiences that got you there, that made you realize that you had enough, and that your durable happiness is enabling and helping others. What advice would you give to others to say, hey, you know what? I'm on the same journey, or I want to start that journey, but I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. I don't know what my purpose is. But listening to you, Krishnan, motivated me. Okay, so I just listened to the podcast. It was awesome. Krishnan, what do I do?
First of all, I'd like to congratulate you as a first step, because you are now looking, right? So you're no longer heads down trying to do the next thing in your to-do list, which means you're already halfway towards durable happiness, right? Which means you're seeking it. So what's my advice is get involved, engage in communities. It could be a personal community. It could be a family. It could be a local church. It could be professional. Keep an eye out for what holds meaning to you. The example that I gave, Paul Shoemaker, the Bothell Temple, and my wanting to do something, right? So that became my meaningful thing. So for you, it'll be different. For each person, it'll be different, right? And then identify a meaningful cause. Usually, if you look at your own life experience of like what you went through, right? And how somebody who's really close to you went through some setbacks or whatever, these experiences usually shape what we are passionate about. So my just living in this area for 30 years and seeing that, hey, the place where I live is hurting and I want to do something about it. That's that meaningful cause, right? And there's no wrong answer here because you can get durable happiness from anything. It's just up to you. And then you have two choices at that point, right? Because I heard this from others too, right? One is says, Krishnan, why are you trying to create something new? Why don't you go join someone else? I'm like, yeah, it's like I know me and I know my personality, and I don't want to create something that already exists, but I enjoy creating something that doesn't exist. So if you are like me, then you look for gaps and then you fill that gap, right? But if you're not like me, you can say, hey, there are lots of other organizations at the MS Alumni. You get a list of them. You can go see, go outside. And then the last thing I'll say is be aware of your superpowers. Superpowers are not just money. It's not just money. It's also your skill. Just having compassion. I'll give you a simple example. In the initial few years, there's a Safeway on Bellevue Way, right next to the mall, where there was an unhoused person who would come to have the Starbucks there, right? And if you sit and just talk to that person, you're improving that person's life because nobody listens to them. They're invisible people. So just a simple act of compassion towards another person, it could be as simple as that. So you never know what your superpower really is till you actually go out and try it.
Well said. Krishnan, thanks for spending time with us. I just have a couple of observations before we close. I live in the Seattle area. I'm sort of used to homelessness. It's a big city. But Krishnan lives in what, quote unquote, we would call the suburbs. And you talked about Bothell having homelessness. A lot of people wouldn't think you would have homelessness in the suburbs, but it's happening, frankly, everywhere, not just here in Washington State and King County, but everywhere around the world. And so there's always, always, always an opportunity. If you're a former Microsoft employee, the first thing I'd say, join the Alumni Network, become part of our community, use the resources to find the existing organizations that you'd like to join that our alumni are part of. Or like Krishnan said, find a hole where it's not being worked and start something new, because there's a lot of innovators at Microsoft. I don't know if everyone knows, but 25% of startups in Washington State are started by former Microsoft employees, including Krishnan, because they're innovative people and they see problems and they want to solve them. Krishnan, thanks again. That was a wonderful, motivating conversation. And I hope everyone who listens walks away and says, you know what? I have to figure out my purpose and I want durable happiness. Krishnan, if people want to know more about Dignity First or Humanize, where should they go for more information?
Yeah, for Humanize homelessness, you can go to our website called humanize.ngo. And you can learn more about that and ways to reach out to us. And if you want to learn or participate in a social tech company that's being launched, you can reach out to me, to Krishnan at humanize.ngo or Krishnan at dignityfirst.org. And think of a startup team with RSUs with a social purpose.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Krishnan.
Thank you, Rich. Really appreciate the time.
This is Rich Kaplan with Krishnan Iyer, and this has been Beyond the Blue Badge.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast app. Make sure you leave a rating and review and share it with someone you know. We hope you join us again for the next episode of Beyond the Blue Badge.